Hey everybody, today we're going to go over the newest Karn, and I have some interesting thoughts as well as a couple of edits that I would have made if I had made this card. Karn Living Legacy is a 4-mana planeswalker with 4 starting loyalty. For +1, you can create a tapped Power Stone token that can tap for colorless, but it can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell. So if you're casting a spell, it has to be an artifact. For the -1, you can pay any amount of mana, look at that many cards, put 1 into your hand, and the rest on the bottom. But you have to pay at least 1 mana. Otherwise, you'll be looking at 0 cards and putting 0 cards in your hand. So I don't like this ability at all. -1 is already a cost, and then paying any amount of mana is also a cost. I think the farther the game goes, the better this is, but usually you want to play Planeswalkers the turn that you can, like turn 4, and on turn 4, Karn just doesn't seem very good at all. For the -7, you get an emblem with tap an untapped artifact you control. This emblem deals 1 damage to any target. I think this is a fine emblem, and I think it works well with the +1, but I still think this is an underwhelming card, and I wouldn't want to play it in Limited or Constructed. In fact, a little bit of a spoiler alert, I haven't done the limited set review for this set yet, but I would give Karn a failing grade, probably a D. It just doesn't really do anything. Like at best, you're going to be spending some mana to look at some cards, get 1 into your hand. It's like a Urza's Tome or JMD Tome or something like that. Just very, very slow, and it doesn't do a lot, and it costs a lot of mana. And it can be interacted with. Sometimes you might not even get a card out of this, your opponent just attacks it and it dies. So for my version of Karn, we've kept the mana cost, we've kept the starting loyalty, and we have kept the ultimate. What we have changed is the first 2 abilities. This is a 0 ability now, and instead of creating a tapped Power Stone token, we have a 1/1 Power Stone Crawler token that just gives you a colorless mana when you tap it, and there's no restriction on what you can do with it. You can cast any spell you want with it. Very nice. And then we have an ability up here, also 0. Look at the top X cards for your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You may reveal a card from among them and put it into your hand. If it was an artifact, put a loyalty counter on Karn. So you still have to be overloaded with artifacts for this Planeswalker to really do a whole lot, and it feeds into itself pretty well with that 0 ability down here, but bare minimum, you're going to get a card back as long as you're playing artifacts. If you don't have artifacts, this top ability doesn't do anything, which I think is a failure of the Karn that we saw last time. You kind of get the bare minimum either way, because the tapped Power Stone tokens are not good, and paying the mana and subtracting 1 loyalty is also not good. With this one, you get your Planeswalker, you don't have to minus it to get the creature's not strong enough to be overwhelming, and you actually get to look at some cards without paying mana, and without a negative, and you might even get a positive. While I was making this card, I had some questions about whether or not these abilities might be a bit too strong, especially when contrasted with the last version. I came to the conclusion that this isn't too strong at all, especially considering the kinds of things that tend to go on in Standard these days. So I think this is perfectly balanced, and if it was what was printed instead of the original Karn, I think it would be much more playable. And I don't think it would be busted. I don't really think there's a gigantic, unstoppable artifact deck that this slots right into and becomes busted in. At any given time, you can only make 1/1/1 that can tap for mana next turn, or draw 1 card, even if you get to select between somewhere between 1 and 5 as far as your choices. That's still not busted, that's just good. It's like getting a little tiny mini dig through time each time, or perhaps like a ponder or a preordain. While obviously the first Karn is what's going to be released and what we're going to have to deal with, I think this was an interesting thought experiment, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have some thoughts about what I did, whether or not the abilities are busted or too underpowered even, feel free to leave them in the comments section. You're watching Robot Relics. Have a wonderful day.